Okay, well, thank you, and welcome to the Lakefield District Historical Society's meeting for the month of October. And as I always say when I get these meetings started, we're glad to see you, and we're glad to see interest in history. History is around us. Who thought at the beginning of the baseball season that I'd be saying tomorrow the Jays could actually win the World Series? It's a great thing. I'm not going to jinx it by saying they will win, but things are looking good at the moment. And I certainly remember the last time they won. I was still a young man. I was still able to bend and touch my toes in those days. Those days are now a memory. Also, we were reminded last month of how quickly history can change with the fire that happened down in the Lakefield. And a long-term store, most of us will know it as Quartha Hardware or Home Hardware. I've been to that store many times. It was there when I was born, and every day I went downtown, I saw it, and suddenly in an afternoon, it's gone. And history's like that. A tornado comes, a fire comes, and it's gone. So with that regard, we're still looking for some place to house our collection. And I know that the train station in Lakefield, the owner is closing down his operations this year. And I'd like to make it a mission that we try to acquire that. I know it's going to take some money. We're not asking anyone to give it to us. But I think that it would be a perfect location both for us and some other community groups. And so we'll be doing some internal work to see about how we can accomplish that goal. And we will certainly do our best to make that happen. And that way we can preserve that location, probably restore it to what it looked like back in 1902 at least, and have a place for our records where people can come and see it. We've been very fortunate that Cheesy Fromage General Store has given us a place in the back to display some of our collection. And believe me, that's only a small part of what we actually have. But it's good to have a place where people can actually see it, where they can come and they can look and they can appreciate the rich history that this community has. Anyway, we start the meeting as always with our land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the former village of Lakefield, now part of the township of Selwyn, is situated on the Treaty 20 Michisagi territory and within the traditional territories of the Michisagi and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. Lakefield District Historical Society respectfully acknowledges that the Williams Treaties First Nations are the stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. And it's good to think about that, about preserving and the integrity going forward. So tonight we have a very interesting topic. Michael Barrett is Vice President of the Lakefield District Historical Society. He is more than an amateur historian, especially when it comes to military things. And believe me, he's talked many times to me for a long length of time about what he knows about the military. In preparation for this talk today, he actually went to France and he looked at some of the places where these battles occurred, some of the graves that were there. I don't think that was the only reason that he went, but it tied in very nicely with his talk. He's had a very active career. He's taught in his very distant past, so I'm sure he can use those talents to bring this message towards us, and we'll have an enjoyable talk and an educational talk that we can all enjoy. So Michael, you want to come up and so I'll have a hand for Michael Barrett. Okay, try it.
Test.
Yeah, test.
Test. I'm not sure if that's, can you hear me? Test. Let me know if it's, yeah. Test. Maureen, can you hear me? That's all that matters to me, Maureen, as long as you can. I know you take quite a beating from Mike. It's not working? John?
the lights a little because we can't.
Dim the lights a little? You want to show my best side? Is that what you're saying, John? Okay. You know, at Probus, they call me eye candy, John. So just saying. So. I know you're jealous, but that's the way it is. So, yeah. So I thank you for coming tonight, especially on such a horrible evening. But I think that it's also appropriate because certainly any of the wars have not been fought in just sunshine and blue skies. What we're actually experiencing tonight is unfortunately some of those elements that, you know, our veterans, our soldiers would have faced in the field, especially in World War I where you were stationed in trenches. And I certainly, as Mike mentioned, I was in France for a couple of weeks and touring World War I, World War II sites. You know, being an ex-history teacher, just love history. I mean, I think I told you before, my honeymoon, I took my wife to the Smithsonian Museum in Washington because I'm a romantic. So she's just kind of put up with me since. But they certainly were telling the stories in World War I, where our soldiers, when it was in the rainy seasons in September and October, you know, our soldiers were standing sometimes chest deep in the water in the trenches and trying to be able to survive. And you know, and I must admit, I was kind of complaining coming here, put on my yellow slicker that I have to be able to bring things in, and it did remind me that we don't have a clue, really, the deprivation and the hardship that our soldiers put up with in any of the wars or throughout history, etc. So tonight it's kind of a good reminder of that. So my topic tonight is certainly the Lakefield Lads, and I kind of stumbled across this when we were looking at some of the archives and potentially looking at topics for tonight. And I was doing a little bit of research and then discovered, certainly in the 21st Battalion, that there were 10 individuals from Lakefield that actually fought in the 21st Battalion. Now I know in World War I many times, brothers, cousins, neighborhoods would go and enlist together. So it's not surprising, but I found it quite interesting to be able to do some research on the 10 individuals. Certainly got in touch with the 21st Battalion. They have an incredible website as well, and then doing some other research as well. But to be able to have brothers or cousins or families or neighborhoods being able to go into the war is not unusual. In fact, that continued throughout World War II as well. In fact, it really only started to end in 1943, early 1944. And it stopped because of an American tragedy where 5 brothers were on a single frigate, which was sunk, and all 5 sons drowned. And it's that point that they began to understand that they had to split up brothers. And Saving Private Ryan, although it's not a true story, that in itself it kind of tells the story. I remember my uncle, who was fought at Dieppe, was captured at Dieppe, spent 3 years in a POW camp. And the reality is that all of the young boys on his street all joined up at age 17, and when they all went to Dieppe together, and of the 14 young lads on the street, only 2 survived, and both of them spent the rest of the war in a POW camp. So I found it quite fascinating in order to be able to do the research. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on World War I, but I just want to be able to set the stage because there's an element of why do we have this incredible enlistment coming from Lakefield. So we know that the war started on August the 4th. We won't go into the reasons and why, wherefore. Someone else can do that at some point. But this is what the British Empire looked like at the start of the war in 1914. And I just put this as a context to be able to show what the size of the British Army was in 1914. So this is on the precipice of a war, of millions of men being mobilized, and Britain had a standing army of 247,000 regular army and 273,000 territorial. So the territorial would be in the colonies. The 247,000 were stationed in Britain on that. And why this is important, because if you add that up, There's about 520,000 men that are really full-time soldiers on August the 4th, 1914. So the World War starts, and it's a different war than they ever anticipated. Though there has been cruel wars previously, the American Civil War being one of them, where there was hundreds of thousands of casualties over the course of the 5 years. Europe had never experienced this. So woefully unprepared for the carnage that was going to take place. Because just in context, so the war starts in August. The Battle of the Marne, which was to stop the German advance into Paris, where they rode the army out on the taxis in order to save the French defeat. 520,000 were wounded and killed literally in the 6 days of battle. So if you think about it, the whole of the British Army and Territorial were put out of action in 6 days. Now these were French, but very soon when the war started, it was quite evident that this was going to be a war that was going to be significantly different. It was not going to be able to be fought by 247,000 regular army, and that's where Canada and the Empire comes into this being, because they recognized very quickly that you were not going to be able to have, this war was going to be costly. Never did they expect this, but this is what it was going to turn out to be. This is why all of a sudden Canada was very, very important for the supply of men, etc. And by the end of the war, Canada has 1.1 million people in the army. The British Empire has almost 3.5 million men and women in the army. It is a war that it changes everything, and hence why it's important. The need for men, this is where the Lakefield Lads kind of fit into this. So the first Canadians that went overseas were 30,000 of the 1st Canadian contingent. This was most of the standing Canadian Army, which amounted to 2,700 and something, and volunteers. But just to put it into context, the war started in August. In October 1914, the first 30,000 Canadian contingent left overseas. And if you remember, this is October, so the Marne has already happened. The call is going out to the Empire, we need more men. Kitchener, Lord Kitchener, you may have heard, the name of Berlin was changed to Kitchener because of that. Or you're from there, so you know the history. That Lord Kitchener wanted to raise an army of 500,000 men, and did so. It was just unheard of, the numbers that they were talking. It's also unheard of the carnage that took place later on as well. So in understanding this, the call for the 21st Battalion went out, for the establishment of the 21st Battalion went out. In fact, on October the 6th, 1915, there are cabinet papers that establishes the need for and the recruitment of the 21st Battalion, officially formed on November the 7th. So that's when the call goes out, and you will see when I start to talk about the 10 individuals, most of them are signing up for the 21st Battalion towards the end of October, anticipating it's coming, because the call's gone out on October the 6th, and November the 6th, November the 8th. There are a couple that join later, but the majority of the individuals we're talking leave Lakefield within that 2-week time period and sign up, attest, the attestation papers are there to be able to get to the 21st Battalion. They are not long in going overseas. So it's November, they start to train. Literally 4 or 5 months later, on May the 6th, 1915, they're loaded on the SS Matagama and taken over to England for further training on the 15th of May 1915. And the only reason why I put the ship name in here is because it's amazing how 6 degrees of separation. My grandmother was a war bride, met a Canadian soldier on the streets of Belfast. As my grandmother said, he was such a handsome fella. He was on the trolley sitting across from me, and I fell in love with him right away, and he asked me to marry him by the time we got 3 stops down the road, and she did, but not until the end of the war in 1919. And she sailed on to Canada on the SS Metagama. So to me, it was kind of like, okay, 6 degrees of separation. So, but they arrived in France on September the 15th. 4 days later, they were on the front lines. That's all it took them. So if you think about it, the amount of training that they had was very little. And I'll show you statistics. The reality is almost none of the 21st Battalion had any military experience whatsoever. These were clerks, farmers, shopkeepers, husbands, brothers. They had no military experience. Some did, but very, very few. Some of them would have known how to shoot, for whatever the case may be, but beyond that, trench warfare, how to carry a kit, 90 pounds on your back, how to march, so I'm learning with the Legion Honor Guard and failing miserably at. They had no clue what they were getting into. And why did they rush them into the line? Because by 1914, 1915, the line had stabilized and they were starting to be able to plan for the spring offensives. They needed individuals, they needed fodder, they needed bodies in the line, and they were forced into the line. They were part of the 4th Canadian Brigade, the 2nd Army, and they were not returned to Canada if they survived until 1919. So what occurred was that they established the commander, Brigadier General William St. Pierre Hughes. And he was the first commander of the 21st Battalion, helped to train the battalion before it went to France. So the 21st Battalion, 52% were British born, which is very, very typical of the recruitment that occurred. My great-grandfather fought in the First World War, he was British born. My second cousin on my great-grandfather's side, he was British born. That was very, very typical. But 59% were not Canadian born. That meant they were born somewhere else. Not just Britain, but somewhere else. And again, 60% had 0 military experience. And of 1,472 volunteers that came in the month of November and before it left, November 6th, 274 were rejected. And I have gone through every single military record of the 10 lads that went. And I would say there's a common issue. Number one, they were all short. That was typical. 5'4", 5'5", 150 pounds. I haven't been 150 pounds since I was about 14. So shorter on the side, but horrendous health. I particularly am interested in the dental records. Most of them had most of their teeth removed. They would have had bridges, and they were very clear. They had the teeth, and they would have all the X's where the teeth were missing. This was not the era of universal dental care. This is individuals who were 17 to 24 years old that had never really had that kind of care taken place. So they went in, 274 were rejected. And it's not because of flat feet or, as Donald Trump would say, was it bone spurs, I think? That they were rejected because they were significantly either malnourished or had been injured somewhere, just not capable of being able to go overseas. I will tell you, by the time the war gets to, in its ugly days, the Somme in 1916, 1917, where millions of people are being killed, they started to lower the bar. They started to turn an blind eye to how old you were. My second cousin was 15 when he enlisted, was killed before he was even 18. He was injured at Vimy Ridge. I have the package of his military records, and it says on his injury in 1917, this individual is not 19 years old. He has not even shown the signs of puberty. He needs to be sent home. He was not sent home. He recuperated, went back into the lines, and unfortunately was killed 2 months shy of his 18th birthday. So standards got eradicated. Those 274 probably would have gone. So the 21st was a very significant battalion. I know this may be difficult to be able to read, But the 21st Battalion fought in many of the major battles. I'm not going to name them all, I'm not going to describe them all, that's for another day. But like Hill 170, Passchendaele, Vimy, Cambrai, Canal du Nord, the attack on the Hindenburg Line. This was not a battalion that sat out for the war. This was a battalion that was put into the major battles that took place and were decimated and fought in those battles. These are most of the significant battles that the Canadian Army took place in. They were part of that 4th Canadian Army. They were involved in all those pieces. The only one major battle that they did not participate in was the march, the pursuit to Mons, which happened in early November of 1918. And in fact, they captured Mons, I think, on the morning of November the 11th. And that's another story about this, the horrific cost of people that were killed on the morning of November the 11th, knowing that the armistice was coming at 11 o'clock. So that's another story for another day. So the 21st Canadians, it was disbanded in 1920. All the people came back in 1919, disbanded in 1920. It was stationed in Kingston, so there is a memorial that exists in Kingston today. And of course, these are souvenir postcards that were issued. The 21st Battalion has a rich history. It had constant reunions. You'll see mentions of that through some of the biographies of the 10 individuals I'm going to talk about. They had significant reunions, and they had sub-reunions. So you'll see mention of a 21st Battalion reunion taking place in Windsor. The 21st Battalion included, at the end, was something in the neighborhood, as best as I can count through the book, and being able to look at some 35 or 36,000 individuals. And so therefore, the reunion was very important. And the 21st Battalion obviously was an important element here in Lakefield for reunions, and many of them became members of Local 77 when it opened in 1926. So this is, and then we'll move into biographies, this is the 21st Battalion in just after the armistice in November 1911, marching across the Rhine in order to be able to participate in the occupation of Germany in that time period from November of 1918 until approximately 1920. The 21st Battalion was all returned home by June and July of 1919. They all came back at that point on multiple ships, but they all came back, all got relieved of their duties in Kingston, and then our story begins as well about our 10 Lakefield Lads. So I want to talk about them. Now, I am not an expert. I've only been in Lakefield I've owned our farm for about 12 years, but really retired about 3.5 years ago. I love Lakefield, I love the history. I like to discover things. I'm naturally nosy, but I am not an expert. Because sometimes it's quite interesting at the Lakefield Historical Society, especially with Sally and Mike and Jackie, and they're all talking about this person's house or this person, the turn of this doctor's house. You remember this? I have no clue what they're talking about. And I have to say, well, where is that? It's over by this street. They used to have the old building there. They tore it down, built one. We're down to fire that. How the heck am I supposed to know what they're talking about? So I'm learning some of the other pieces of history and the names. So, but what I depend upon is documentation that I can find, and certainly doing the research, which I'm capable of, but there are stories that I don't know. So if I inadvertently insult tonight, honestly, it's not from the heart, it's from the lack of knowledge that's the case. I live on Selwyn Road, and I live in a place called, it's beside the old branch schoolhouse, if anyone knows that. And it's interesting, I did a little posting a couple weeks ago about SS number 9. And there was a little article about it, and I like to post every day in Facebook and write a little history thing as my research. And I said, here's a little history about SS number 9. There's a newspaper article. I said, I have no idea where this is. I said, oh, it's on Selwyn Road. It's just down there. Oh my gosh, that's the schoolhouse beside me. I had no idea that was called SS number 9. And then I got a history lesson, so which is terrific. And I got some nice pictures as well that I could share with the current owner. So I'm still learning. So the first individual, I'm doing this in alphabetical order, is Charles Raymond Armstrong. And his attestation papers are over there, so you can see their actual signature, well, not their actual, their signatures on when they signed up. So Charles was born, and there's some controversy over this. You find him in the 1901 census, it's very clearly stated that he is born in the United States. I cannot find a birth certificate for Charles in Canada. I cannot find one for him in the US, but the 1901 census is very, very clear that he has an American mother and he's born in the United States. In the 1911 census, it says he's born in Lakefield, Ontario. So there is some question of where he was born. I'm of the ilk that he was born in the United States. Not that that's an issue, because not everybody is actually born in Lakefield. And he was a son of Daniel and Mary Ellen Snellgrove. And he was the second of 5 children. So they immigrated, or it looks like the parents immigrated obviously prior to 1901 to come to Lakefield. And what he was, when he enlisted on November 11th, 1914, he was an employee of the cement plant right here in Lakefield. And he was single, 5'3", 135 pounds. I can't find the weight, 135 pounds. I wasn't 135 pounds since I was in grade 6. But he was wounded twice. He was wounded once in 1916 by a bullet wound. In 1917, he participated in the Battle of Vimy in April of 1917, and he was wounded a second time. He was single, so he was sending $20 a month back to his mother, which is the maximum amount that you could send back home was $20. Some people did, some people did not, but he sent $20 back, and he was discharged on July the 10th, 1919 as unfit. What that means is, because I have looked at his records, that injury that he experienced in 1917 was debilitating for him. He still was at the front lines, but he was primarily in non-combat roles after that injury. But when they discharged him in 1919, he was classified as unfit. That's an important designation, because that also meant that he was eligible for a permanent pension as being unfit. Some individuals tried to become unfit. One individual, well, we'll talk about it when we get there. Not everybody was successful in being able to get that unfit designation. So you have to be able to recognize that, they were woefully paid. It was $1 a day. And if you were in the hospital, if you were injured, as he was, as many of our 10 lads are, your pay was reduced. So despite, this kind of reminds me of the Titanic, your pay stopped when the ship went under. And so there's a whole tragedy to that. But he was, put in perspective, 4 years, 209 days. You will see long service from most of these individuals. So this is 4 years, as many of them are, away from his family. That is not a short duration, it's a long duration. But he was, in July 1918, he was given a medal for bravery in the field. And this related back to his efforts in 1917 on being able to be part of that attack. So this is, like I said, he was in a non-combat role. This is one element that I found in his files about what he did. So I'll read it to you because you won't be able to read it. The Protective Patrol of D Company, which Armstrong was part of, was responsible for securing the 2 prisoners and blah, blah, blah at 4:45 a.m. on the 11th. These German non-commissioned officers, having apparently lost their direction in the mist, endeavored to return to their lines when challenged by our patrol. But Armstrong, Private Armstrong, at once grasping the situation, outflanked them and forced their surrender. After handling the prisoners handing over the prisoners at his company headquarters, he returned to no man's land and located one of his comrades who had gone missing from the patrol. Private Armstrong's excellent work was rewarded by the immediate award of a military medal. So many of the individuals you see in the 10th Lakefield Lads are heroes in my mind, having to go way above and beyond. But also post-war, in 1921, he was back living with his mother on Albert Street. He had gone back to school. At that point, he was a student. He was studying commerce. I don't know where, it doesn't say, but he studied commerce. In 1931, he was still on Albert Street. He was working at the cement plant, but was laid off. The cement plant closes in 1931. This is also in the midst of the Depression. He spends most of the rest of his life working in construction. He's a member of local council in Lakefield. He runs for and is a municipal councillor in Lakefield. He is a member of Branch 77. He is noted as musically inclined. There are many articles that I can find where he is the musical entertainment at weddings and events, playing the banjo and the violin. And he passes in 1973 at the age of 81, and he is interred here in the Lakefield Cemetery. So the next one is Frederick Samuel Ballston, and his attestation papers, and he was born in 1893 in Lakefield. He is the son of Miriam and son of Miriam Mary Nellie Ballston. There is no father recorded. Frederick, unfortunately, is one of those, he's labeled, because the birth records are horrendous this time period, as illegitimate. Nellie is just not quite 17 years old. The father's name is not mentioned anywhere. So he's raised by his grandparents here in Lakefield. Nellie disappears. I find her later on in the census records. She goes to the United States, which we'll touch base on this. But he listed in 1915. He's a laborer here. He's a little taller, but 5'6", 155 pounds. He's single. He's wounded in Belgium in 1916. He falls in love in England. He meets somebody on leave and falls in love with Edith Williams and is given permission. There's quite a nice few little letters in his file about asking permission. It takes him about 6 months to get permission to actually travel to England to get married. And he marries in 1918, and at that point, because he has no mother and his grandparents are gone, he keeps his money for himself. In fact, he's one of the few at the end of the war, has a nice little sum that he can start life with. Most people go home with like $24 or $23 or something like that. But he is removed from the front line on July the 17th, 1918, as medically unfit. He has difficulty being able to handle the stress of the line. The wound that he had in 1916 is causing him issues, so he's removed from the line on July the 17th. He's not discharged though until May 22nd. He stays with the 21st Battalion in the peacekeeping element that they took, and again, 4 years and 4 months. And then he it's back in 1919. His wife follows him not on the same ship, but they had a program that if you had met somebody in Britain, Canadian government would pay for the transportation. So his wife took advantage of that. My grandmother said, no, I'm not sure if I like you that much to go. And my grandfather never stopped complaining that he had to pay her fare in 1919. And often said to his 7 kids, your grandmother owes me $33 because that's what it cost me to bring her over here, when she could have come for free. But Edith came for free. She was part of that British war brides in World War I and came over. So he immigrated to Buffalo, because that's where Nellie ended up. Nellie left Canada, immigrated to the United States, married again, had a couple more kids, so he had some half-siblings, but Nellie remained there, and in 1920, he's actually living with his, in the 1920 census, he's living with his mother in there. And she's still a very young lady, because she's only about 16 years older than he is. So He works in a feed mill in 1920. He's still working in the feed mill. He has 2 sons in 1930. He's still in Buffalo. He's kind of unique because he attends the Vivian Memorial dedication on July the 16th, 1936. That's where the Prince of Wales is there. There's a dedication. There's lots of YouTube videos out there. It cost $126 a person to go. He is the only one of the 10 that attends. And why? Because he's working at a feed mill and he's totally employed throughout all the 1930s. $126, it was cheap for what you got. You got all your hotels, your shipping, your transport, you got transportation in France. It wasn't incredible, but still $126 a person. And if you did not have a job, $126 was the moon. But he was the only one that attended. And if you look at the videos on YouTube, maybe he's in that crowd there for sure. So in the 1940 and 1950 census, he's still working at the feed mill, and he sadly passes away on May 22nd, 1957, just 16 days after his wife passed away as well. And his sons passed away in 2019 and 1998. And this is a write-up that I found in one of the U.S. Newspapers, and I just want to talk about it. He said, at the Windsor rallies, so that's the 21st Battalion, they never failed to be on hand. This is his wife Edith and himself, for they were so very welcome because of their friendly disposition and all times their perfect approach. Fred wrote us often, was always reported incidents of note. It was a terrible blow when his good wife died. Within a week, he took sick, was taken to the hospital in Buffalo. An operation was performed, and although Fred came through the operation successfully, he remarked he felt tired and passed on. Truly, can it be said, they were inseparable in life, inseparable in death. So they had, as I said, they had 2 sons later on, but that was certainly Fred. Next one is, and this is quite a name, Dudley Herbert Edward Cornell Chads. So this is his attestation papers. He was born in London, England in 1891. He was a child of parents who divorced, which is very uncommon in 1899. Didn't happen very often. But I read the divorce papers, and because they are online, and I read them, and certainly Herbert was a miserable shite. So let's put it that way. Adultery, physically violent, and Herbert had 1 sibling, and they divorced. But he immigrated on his own in 1911. His mother very much believed in education. And so when Dudley came, he had a degree. He certainly on his attestation papers, he notes himself as an analytical chemist, which is very, very different than a lot of the clerks or farmers that we've seen. So he married a local girl, Laura May Vane Webster, in Lakefield in 1913, and they had a son, Juicy, in 1914. And you notice, 1 month to the day, he left his wife behind and enlisted on November the 24th, and he was gone for 4 years and 6 months as his wife stayed here, and he was not discharged until May the 13th, 1919. All this time that his wife was here in Lakefield. Post-war, he too went to the United States. He went to Kansas. I don't think we're in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. So he went to Medicine Lodge, and in 1920, his son Dudley Barrett, that's his middle name, was born. Dudley, interesting enough, perhaps because of his father's French connections, maybe Canadian connections, maybe because of his mother's connections, he enlisted in the RCAF pilot in the Royal Canadian Air Force in World War II. He came back to Canada and enlisted. He was a much decorated pilot, enlisting for 3 tours of duty, which was unheard of in World War II. You did your 20 trips and you'd get out. He went for 60. So quite a hero, I would say, in that standpoint. Because of his analytical chemist background, he worked as a chemist. being the National Gypsum Man, had a very successful career, became plant manager in 1938, retired in 1960, American citizen in 1935, and then certainly he was very much active in his community. He was the president of the city council, he was a civic leader, he passed in 1964 at the age of 73, and his wife Laurel in 1969, and his sons passed in 1989 and 1970. This is the second of our 10 that moved to the United States and become American citizens. So, Richard Joseph Hill. There are 2 Hills, the Hill brothers. So there are 9 families for our 10 Lakefield Lads. Richard Joseph Hill is one of them. In fact, my good friend gave me a letter from him today, and I'm going to do some research to find out who that letter is addressed to. I'm going to be Sherlock Holmes and find out who Marguerite is. So Richard Joseph Hill, that's his attestation papers. He was born in 1895 in Lakefield. There's a little bit of dispute. He's actually born in 1895. The records show he's born in 1895, but he uses 1893 all over the place. I'm not sure why. It's not like he had to be older to be able to join. Most people, like he was already of age, it wasn't an issue, but I don't know why. It's quite clearly in his handwriting. He writes 1893. It's quite clear in the records. It's 1895. Just one of those little things in life. He is the son of Wellington and Rachel Ellen Crow. He often goes by Joseph Richard. So the records are back and forth. His birth certificate says Richard Joseph, but a lot of his papers say Joseph Richard. So he enlisted on November the 6th. He was a lumberman. He was single, 5'5". He lived on Clementi Street here in Lakefield. And he did assign $20 a month to, like a good son, to his mother. But he was wounded in September the 15th, 1916, and with that wound, he was awarded the military medal in December of 1916. And again, he was wounded at the Battle of Hill 70, which is a horrendous battle. And he was wounded, but at that point, although he had to stay in Canada, stay in France until 1919, he had no further active duty. He was behind the lines. The wound was significant, and so therefore could not participate in any further battle after that, but still had to stay 4 years and 3 months. So, and this is what his award was for. It's denoted for marked gallantry and devotion to duty as a stretcher bearer. He acted as a stretcher bearer throughout the engagement, moving the wounded to places of safety during intense enemy bombardment. You can just imagine what no man's looked like, and the stretcher bearers going out, probably looking for nurses with the little blue crosses to be able to take care of them. And then, but this was an incredible achievement, and he was recognized for that. This is a letter that he writes to his mother on August the 20th, 1917. Dear Mother, I've been admitted to the hospital here in Manchester, England, after being wounded on August the 15th during the Great Canadian Advance at Lens. I was slightly wounded, get this, I was slightly wounded in the hip and have 2 wounds in my left arm, one in the muscle and one in the forearm. I've not heard from Sherman, his brother, which we'll talk about next. Hope he is safe and sound. My arm is fairly bad and will take months to heal. He never healed. He never went back into battle. It'll take months to heal, so I'm pretty certain of being sent to Canada this time. This is the third I've been hit, and the second time I've been to England. It's another 2 years before he got home. And I'm feeling fine, looking well, but I'm pretty sure I will never go to France again. 18 months service in France, wounded 3 times, having won a King's Decoration is a record few men can equal, and it's about time the conscripts can take a turn. I must close now, so goodbye. So it's another 2 years before he came home to see his mother. In 1931, we find him working at the cement plant as a laborer, making $750 a year. He passed away in 1955 after a very brief illness at the age of 60. At the time of his death, he was the bookkeeper and accountant at the sanitation department for the city of Peterborough. And he was an avid 21st veteran, attended all the reunions that he could. He never married, and he was interred in the Lakefield Cemetery as well. And this is just his write-up in the newspaper. He was seriously wounded in 1980 and won the military medal. Lived in Peterborough for many years, and at the time was a bookkeeper. He was an enthusiastic 21ster, never missed a reunion. And the old battalion were there to pay their last respects to him when they said their final goodbyes. Sherman Ernest Hill, brother of Joseph, and born in 1890, so he was the older brother. I highlight 1890. I don't know what it is about the Hills, but the name, the date is not. He uses a different date on many other occasions. I'm not sure, but I don't know why they were old enough to go in. It's just one of those mysteries to history. Again, we know that there were 7 siblings. He was a laborer. He had gotten married on August 14th, 1915. So you can see he's one of the later volunteers that go to the most go in 1915 in the sense they're on a ship, the Metagama. Sherman's not there. He's 5'5", 150. He sent $20 to his wife, and had a son, Sherman Roger George, was born in 1916, and then he goes overseas. Sherman is, I will say, an incredible individual. I only know him through history. He's an individual that is recognized very quickly for his leadership abilities. He is getting promotions before he even leaves Canada. He's given the position of paymaster, very, very important element. This is an individual that's recognized very quickly for his abilities on being able to go forward. In fact, he constantly resigns commissions in order to get to the front line. He has the ability to be able to stay behind the lines in a planning role, but he gives them up. In fact, he does it on 2 occasions. And he's a bit of a hero because he receives 2 military medals. He gets the military medal and then the bar to the military medal as well. He's the most decorated of our 10 Lakefield Lads. He's discharged in 1919, returns, a little less of years service because he didn't join till later, 3 years. It was still 3 years, but he wasn't at home. So, and this is the article on the 29th of August, so the war is almost over. Graciously pleased to approve the award of the military medal for bravery in the field. He is an incredible individual. If you read the account, he goes into no man lands, does not give up fighting in order to be able to take the pillbox, as I would call them, and continues to be able to fight to make sure that his men are safe. And remember, this is a guy that gave up behind the lines in order to get into the front line. And then there's again, he was given the bar to the medal after the war ended on 1919 as well. So very much decorated as well. He returns to Lakefield. He becomes a lockmaster on Lock 23. He has a daughter, Denise, born in 1920. Gordon is born in 1922. Jean is born in 1924. And Helen is born in 1927 after Sherman's death. And he was accidentally drowned trying to free the ice around a log on New Year's Eve day in 1927. He was trying to free a frozen lock. He had left a note on the table to his wife. I hear there's trouble at the lock. I'm going to go down and try and free it. I'll be back before you get home. His wife had gone shopping in Lakefield to pick up some of those last items for Christmas, I'm sure. And when she got home, she saw the note on the table, waited until about midnight, and then when he did not return home, she called the police or firefighters to be able to find him. They could not find him. It wasn't until, 1926. He was not found until December the 28th. I could just imagine what Christmas was like forever in that family, for forever and ever, having lost their father. And remember, so then about 4 months later, Helen was born. So he never saw Helen was born. Maud did remarry, but divorced. The wedding did not, the marriage did not last long. Unfortunately, she died young as well at age 46. So if you think about it, that's 1939. She passed away Helen would not have even been maybe about 12 years old. So the family experienced a second tragedy after that. And then not only that, but on a third tragedy, Sherman, who was their son Sherman, Roger, was killed on June the 13th, 1944. And I have done a little bit of research on Sherman. There's a horrendous story about this too. He was reported missing on June the 13th, 1944. There's many letters from his wife writing to the Canadian authorities asking for news, and they continued to be able to say he's a prisoner of war, we haven't received anything, only to confirm on February the 12th, 1945, that indeed he'd been killed on June the 13th. And by the way, Mrs. Hill, we've overpaid you since June 13th, 1944, and you need to repay us the pay that he received from June 13th, 1944 for until February the 12th when he was declared dead. The letters in this file are absolutely heart-wrenching as she is attempting to be able to find accommodations for her family. She's living with her parents and desperately trying to find accommodation. They did, and any pay that was potentially coming. They never received his final effects. They did not receive the check until 1948. Wow. It's a tragedy what this family went through. And remember, Sherman was a hero, recognized not only by the British government for his bravery, but also by the number of promotions he got that he turned down. And so this is one of those tragedies. He was the first of our Lakefield 10 to die. And these are some of the articles in the newspaper. Sherman's still missing. Friends fear the body is claimed by the autonomy. And they did ultimately find the body just 300 yards away from lot number 23. And then obviously the funeral and stuff took place after that. So it's one of those tragedies. Reginald Darling Murduff. Darling is a very common name, as I have found in these parts. And it's funny because the DNA, etc., comes together. You'll see that these people are also related. You'll see later on that one of our individuals marries a Murduff, and they're related to him. So you're a very incestuous community. Just come into this, in a nice way. So Murduff was born in Lakefield. He was the son of George and Sarah Darling, hence where I guess the Darling name is. They had 4 siblings. He worked at the sawmill with his father in 1901, so in the sense is he's working side by side. When his mother died in 1907, he went to live with his sister, Lottie, on Bapty Lane. And he then worked at the Lakefield Canoe Company in 1910. So that very famous canoe company here in Lakefield. He enlisted on November the 5th. He was 5'5", and he was wounded on October the 27th, 1950, a left leg bullet wound. He was transferred back to the battalion October the 14th, 1916. So put that into perspective. He was out with his injury for almost a full year. So this was not just a little injury. This is not like a pass-through wound, put some salt on it, and you're back in the front lines. He went to the labor pool of July 1918 as unfit for front lines. He too, because of the wound, was not able to be in the front lines. He did rejoin on the 21st of December 1918. Remember, the war is over at this point. He went back to the 21st Battalion as part of the occupying force and discharged on May 24th. 4 years and 6 months, a long time to be away as well. So this is the wounded leg on 1915. The news was contained by relatives in Lakefield. Private Murduff was well known in Peterborough along the Trent Canal, having been with the Bessie Butler. So he was on the Bessie Butler, one of those steamers on the lakes here, prior to joining the Lakefield Canoe Company, but he was well known for that as well. And in fact, later on, he returns to that as well. This is a letter, you can't read it, but it's interesting. It's 1917. It's written by him to a friend. He says, "I got your letters and maple leafs So his friend sent him Maple Leafs from Canada, the Leafs. He was thrilled with it because he was able to give them to a lot of people, one of them to a little sailor boy who belongs to the Navy. He's only, and I don't know what that says, if it's 19, 18, 14, 15, I don't know.
Looks like 12.
12.
Okay, could be 12, so that's even worse than I thought. So, but he gave it to a little boy. He was thrilled to death on getting the Maple Leafs, and this is how important that mail was. So he was really thrilled. The postcards of the London Bridge that he saw during one of his trips to London. I balanced that. I thought it was time to take a drink. So, post-war, he returned to Lakefield. He lived with his sister Georgina. He did work on the Bessie Butler as a fireman, and then at the liquor store here in Peterborough, pardon me. He was quite a curler, won a number of bond steals. He was noted as a fine dresser. If you search the newspapers, you can find many, many times where he is noted as winning another curling tournament. He must have been a force to be reckoned with. He was noted as a very fine dresser. In fact, many of the elements, it would say, he has shown up, he won the curling and he marched out of the arena in his finery in his suit. So he was quite known for being able to be well dressed. He died he's a member of Lakefield Lodge and the Clementi Lodge. And he died in 1954 at the age of 71. He never married and was interred at Hillside alongside his sister. So that's his obituary in 1954. Canal boats most of his life. He was employed with the Lakefield Boat Company again in the 1950s. Sent to baptism the Lakefield Legion, and the funeral was held out of the Armstrong Funeral Home here. Norman Douglas Hurl. Lakefield, 1895. William and Margaret Curtin. He was one of 14 children, so not a lot of cable TV in those days. So he was a carpenter, machinist, and a cinema operator at the corner, which you pointed out to me at one point. Michael, that was a cinema. Get out of here. That was a cinema? Like when I just found out there was bowling alleys in Lakefield, I was absolutely gassed, so that's really terrific. So I'm learning lots. 5'6". He was one of the few. He had 4 years of experience with the Peterborough Heavy Artillery Battery before joining, so he had been part of the militia. Now, he had a few issues. Hurl's a very interesting individual. His file is full of miscreant behaviors. While he was in Kingston, he was constantly being found drunk in public. Is there any Hurls here?
All the way up to the one I know.
Or nobody's going to say there's a Hurl?
We're drinking.
He was drunk in public many times in Kingston before they left. He was arrested in Paris in March of 1918. For why? He was AWOL. He had disappeared for 30 days. This was not a little element. So, but he did receive 2 good conduct medals. So there was a yin and yang to Norman. And in 1918, he was AWOL, and he was sentenced to 3 years hard labor. That is unusual. He was AWOL for a long time, a second time. So Norman Hurl seems to me a guy who, because he's very, he has when he's in battle, he has an incredible contribution. I think he's just a guy that just doesn't like to be told what to do. The regiment of that is really rough for him. So, and I guess he likes his alcohol. But in 1918, so he's charged with AWOL. He's sentenced, but by the time they can't get him back from the front lines. So he's still in battle on April the 29th, and he has shrapnel wounds to the face and the right hand. And then he's discharged on February 17th, but still 4 years and 3 months and 6 days. So in 1919, he returns to Lakefield. He marries in 1920 to Cora May Cummings. They have 2 children. Dorothy May, born in 1921, and Carl Norman, born in 1923. And Carl was with the RCAF, and unfortunately, he was killed in Germany in 1943. So one of those other persons that are also recognized by the Lakefield Veterans website as well. He died at the sanatorium. He was quite ill with tuberculosis and had spent almost a year at the Gravenhurst Sanatorium, and he died of a stroke at the age of 51 in 1946. Cora passed in 1985, and both Nora, I've dropped an R there, but Nora and Cora are also interred at the the Hillside Cemetery here as well. John Roy Robinson, 1893, here in Bridge North, William Robinson and Isabella Young, one of 10 children as well. And he was a canoe builder as well with the Peterborough Canoe Company. 5'7", enlisted on November the 19th. He has the worst luck. His first day in the front line, he is wounded at the Battle of Courcelette. It's a horrendous battle as well. Shrapnel wounds to the left hand and both upper thighs. You can see how seriously it is because 2 weeks later he's invalided. The wounds are so significant. On 1915, he was still hospitalized in 1917 in England. So that just shows you how horrible this was. He was returned to Canada in 1917. He did not come back to Lakefield until 1918 because he was in a hospital in Kingston, still recovering from his wounds. And then he was discharged on 1918, one of the earlier discharges because he was so badly wounded, but still over 3 years before he got home. His family did visit. There's records of his family visiting him in Kingston, but he was not allowed home because he was very significantly injured. So in 18, he returned to Lakefield. He married Edna Alice Payne, another name that I know has deep roots in Lakefield that I'm learning about, and who was born in 1896 and 1918. He was a hardware clerk in Lakefield. He had one son, Earl Roy Robinson, but then Edna passed away in 1920 at a very young age of a heart embolism, and he married again to Ida Jane Lou Murduff, if you kind of link this back to the Murduffs. October in 1921, he's a sales representative at the service station in Lakefield on Albert Street. That's what it's listed as. In 1931, his second wife passes away in 1952. He himself passes away. He moves to New Liskeard. He passes away in 1976 in New Liskeard. His son Earl, as you can see, his only son, passed away in 1912. So he was on his own in New Liskeard, but they did return him back to Lakefield to be buried at the Lakefield Cemetery. So, Wilbert Lawrence Squibb Webster. You will notice Webster was mentioned in a couple of other wives' names as well. If we do a DNA chart, there's lots of elements within this as well. Again, he was born in Lanark, Ontario, to Wilbert James Webster and Carolyn Mason, one of 10 children. Family moved to Lakefield in 1904. And then he himself moved in 1910 to Fenelon Falls. His family members and uncle had a car dealership, which would have been quite rare in 1910. It also served him well because when he joined the Army, he could say that he actually had the ability to drive a car, knew how to fix a car. I mean, it was quite rare in that day. He did have some experience with the East Army Battalion. He listed on November the 11th, and he listed himself as a chauffeur because that was what he was doing with the car dealership. He had 3 instances of inappropriate behavior before embarking. So maybe he went out with our friend Mr. Hurl, but he was drunk and disorderly. 3 demerits. In fact, he had money taken away from his paycheck as well. And while he was in England, for that very brief time period, he had 3 more disorderly conducts for being disorderly and drunk in public. And then he went to France 3 more times for disorderly and drunk contact as well. But he was wounded by shrapnel in 1916. He was wounded again on November the 9th and discharged not until 1919. He came back. He was very interesting, because this is a guy who's disorderly, but he leaves a lasting impact on Lakefield. It's quite fascinating. He became a member of the Lakefield Volunteer Fire Department and the Citizens Band. He became the fire chief in 1921. And he was very active in the community. He made very significant, when he resigned and moved, the papers are full of his contribution, because he put in the designed maps where all the buildings were, so that when there was a fire, that you knew where you were going. And he also put siren alarm systems in, so you could ring, like, be able to pull the element to be able to understand where a fire was. He did some remarkable changes in literally just 4 years as the fire chief. He resigned in 1925 because he went to Dundas to be part of the Costine Ortolus Chemical Toilet System Factory. He was flushed with success. So, because he also, he has a number of patents in Canada for a number of pumps that move excrement in the system. Maybe he learned that when you raise shit in town, you can actually move shit when you're on life. I don't know. Don't put that in the recording. So he did marry in 1927. When he got to Dundas, he was single until that point, had 3 children. Now Squibb is the only one who served in both wars, because in 1940 he re-enlisted. He re-enlisted out in Dundas, but he actually served until 1942. Now he was in Canada. It was being to train individuals. It was part of a guard duty post, but he did, 1942 was honorably discharged. So he's one of the few that have, now there's many, but he's the only one of the Lakefield 10 that actually has served. So he has 2 numbers. Obviously the first number for the First World War and a second number for the Second World War. He passes in 1974 at the age of 77. Gwendolyn lives until about 94, but even though they moved away, they still came back to be able to be both interred at the Hillside Cemetery here as well. So this is his Squibb, and why do they call him Squibb? Squibb is a nickname given to him because apparently he was just a little tyke of a thing when he was young, and it reminded them of a squib as a part of a pen, and they thought he just kind of looked like this little squib of a thing, and it stuck. So that's one of the stories I read. What's the truth? I don't know, but that's just one of the ones that I read in the Element. So this is his obituary, and he was very much involved. This is William Squibb. He's there in the Webster's Brigade. He's part of that group. I don't know which one he is, but I found he is part of that. He always participated as well in the 21st Battalion. That connection to not only the 21st but all the battalions is very, very strong and lasts a lifetime. Bruce Rodney Blanchard, he's born in Lakefield in 1894. He immigrates to Canada on his own. Let's back that up. He's born in Lakefield. He's the son of William Blanchard, who immigrates to Lakefield. William Blanchard, you won't know, but if you actually look him up, he's quite a famous contributing general in World War I as a Canadian. In fact, he actually is overseas in France for 3 years before he leaves the army in 1917. This is his father. He's diagnosed with terminal cancer I think it's like October the 27th, 1917. He's invalided out. He passes away within a week, and he had esophagus cancer. I cannot even imagine the pain this individual must have been in being able to continue to serve and lead in France in active battle. But this is his son, and his son does him proud. He enlists on November the 4th. He's one of the biggest ones. He's 5'9". He is also promoted twice in 1915, but he gives up the promotions to go to the front line. He wants to be part of the front line. He's wounded in St. Eloi crater, and that's when they tunnel and put the TNT underneath and blow it up. And he was wounded in that battle because what happened? They blew the crater up, big hole, and all the Canadians kind of rushed into the hole because they were told to. And of course, then the Germans just stood on the edge and picked them off like turkeys in hunting season. So he was wounded. He was hit in the right arm and shoulder with a bullet, but from his own regiment. So he got shot by one of his own soldiers by mistake. But then he was then wounded and hit in the right hip, back and right eye. At the back and the right eye was shrapnel as well. So he was significantly wounded at that. He was given the medal for that, the military medal. He was discharged in 1916 because he had he was significantly injured. He wasn't, though, discharged until 1919, but he only had active service behind the lines from the point that he was wounded. So this is, he's taken up a commission. Private Bruce Blanchard, although wounded through the lung by a rifle bullet, continued to throw bombs at the enemy until his supply was exhausted. And that's why he was awarded and decorated as well. And this is from the London Gazette. So this picture appeared in the London Gazette and across Canada as well, where he is given the Special Medal, specifically recommended for a wonderful spirit and cool daring display as one of the bombing party under Captain Miller, Lieutenant Brownlee, gallantly attacked crater number 2, continued to hurl bombs into the enemy's trenches. He was certainly recognized for his bravery as well. And this is another photo that appeared where he's being awarded by Brigadier General Grenville Harrison, getting his award because he was wounded in 1916 at St. Eloi. So he was certainly decorated and certainly publicized with regards to that. Post-war, he moved to Toronto. As soon as the war was over, his father had already died. His mother was living in Toronto. That was the draw. He went home to be with his widowed mother. And he attended the reunions. He married Minnie Ludlow. He worked at the Unemployment Commission Office before it was even an Unemployment Commission Office from 1928 to 1959, a civil servant. Passed away at the Sunnybrook Hospital at 78, leaving his wife, and he had 4 children. And Minnie passed away at the age of 95 in 1991. And this is him attending one of the 21st reunions, 21st Battalion reunions. So he was one of the last to pass of the battalion. The battalion had really started to thin out by 1972, unfortunately. And this is just another element where he was talked about. He continued to do battle with the enemy and just expressing condolences to his wife, Min, as well. So our last of the 10. So Leonard Charles Wingate. And this one is of interest to me because when I did go to France, I made a point of being able to visit his grave. He's the only one of the Lakefield 10 that is actually killed in action and is buried in France. So I did take the time to be able to go and visit his grave, and I had made some crosses and left it there on being able to recognize the contribution of Leonard. So he is born in London, England. He is the son of William and Sarah. He's a shopkeeper's son. He leaves England. His parents do not come to Canada. He comes independently in 1901 on his own, looking for a better future, I guess. So he comes, don't know why, but he ends up in Lakefield and he marries Janet Jenny Helena Kidd, another name that is very, very popular in these parts, which I'm learning as well. So they had 4 children in 1907, 1909, 1911, 1913. But Marguerite, it's not the same, dies at 7 Regent Street in Lakefield at 1 year and 3 months of diphtheria. So his only daughter passes away. He enlists on January 12, 1916, so he's our latest attester to be able to come in. He's 5'9", he's also one of the biggest. As you can see, he's a very broad, very healthy, put together man. He was, again, promoted multiple times. 4 times he gave up his promotion to go to the front line. An incredible achievement. His brother William, who also immigrated, because I really love to keep exploring the family trees, he immigrated to New Zealand in 1901. So one son went to England, another son went to New Zealand. There was still another 5 sons, I think, or something at home. There was a lot of children as the shop and part of the shop. But he was killed in action in 1917. So he arrived in France in December 23rd, 1917. He was transferred to the 21st Battalion only on August the 12th, 1918. So he was not originally part of the 21st, but they put everybody kind of local together. So he went to the 21st. And then during the battle, the battalions advanced on the Sensee River, to Bissanatois. He was killed in action and was buried at the cemetery there. There's 2 soldiers in his grave, which is very rare. So it has, they're both interred in the same grave, and that's the one certainly that I went to visit to be able to pay homage and honor. But he was killed on August 27th, 1918. That's a significant time period in the war, because that marks the 100-day advance of the Canadians. The last 100 days, the August 26th, it was the big launch of the Canadian offensive that took place on the line. And you will see there are more Canadians killed from August 26, 1918 to November 11th than the rest of the war. So this is an incredible carnage that takes place. My great-grandfather is killed on August 26, 1918, the day that the battle commenced and started. So this is a letter that he wrote to his wife. I wish this old war was over so we could come home again. It seems like ages ago since I left, although it's been only 2 years, but it seems more like 10. I suppose, dear, we must be very patient, as the end does not appear in sight. Yet something like the parcel you sent me last month is coming, and that's all I know about. Complaining about the Canada Post, even in those days as well. The sad part is, I'm not sure if he ever got the parcel, but I do know that his wife never saw Wingate again. He did not go home. So this is his brother that I was able to find online, buried in France. He was only aged, I think it's 21 that it says, or 28, pardon me. Post-war, his wife Jenny continued to live in Lakefield. Remember, she's on her own with 3 kids, 3 sons. She's living on Concession Street in Lakefield in 1921. She still lives in the same house in 1931. She's paying $8 a month rent to rent the house, but she has 2 surviving children that are still with her. And when I say 2 surviving children, because Leonard tragically was killed in 1930. If you read my little blurb that I do for Lakefield Historical, he was electrocuted at the cement plant in 1930, and so therefore passed. So she lost her husband, then lost her son in 1930. She dies at age 80 in 1959. Kenneth dies in 1969. William in 2011 at age 99. And she is interred in the Lakefield Cemetery as well. So just in closing, some statistics. 350 men of the 21st Battalion received awards. It was an incredible achievement. Many of them you'll see in our Lakefield 10. 917 men of the 21st Battalion were killed. It has a casualty record slightly above average of almost 21.5%. So you had a 1 in 5 chance. Now this is killed. If you know, a lot of our Lakefield 10, only 1 was killed, which is in 10, it's kind of really unusual, but you'll also see the number that were wounded. So as a casualty and wounded, you would see that I think if I right, it was like 8 out of 10 were either killed or wounded fighting the 21st Battalion. And so 241 men of the 21st Battalion have no known grave in France, and are either listed on the Vimy Ridge Memorial or other subsequent memorials in France as well. And as I said, I did take the opportunity not only to visit Wingate's grave, but any other Lakefield veteran or casualty that I could find, and did go to the cemeteries and put the little cross, take a picture and post it on Facebook as well, just in honor of our veterans that were part of that. Because certainly the 21st Battalion and is very rare in the sense we have 10 here. Very rare that we only have one that was killed, tragically. All of them still carried the elements of that 21st Battalion with them for their whole life, whether it's in injuries or what they did for the rest. That connection with the 21st Battalion is very, very important, and it's certainly a battalion and contribution that we as Lakefield residents can be very, very proud of. And that actually concludes my lengthy presentation.
Oh my God, I don't think you're quite as long as last time.
No, that was still too long.
But I'd like to thank you for taking the time to research the lives of these people, these great people that are, of course, no longer with us. So often when you hear presentations about the military, it's about this campaign, it's about this weapon, it's about them fought for so many days and this occurred. But Michael, you brought these people to life. Most of them died before I got to know them, of course, but I knew their families, and I can identify with what you said. And it's important that as we go away from the two world wars and the subsequent armed conflicts, that we never forget the human costs that are involved, the dedication of those people who, when war came, they didn't stay home in Lakefield. They put up their hand and said, I'll fight for the Emperor, I'll fight for Canada. And I admire that dedication and that courage in a way that I can only imagine, because I never had to suffer with a war during my lifetime. But thank you once again, Michael, for your efforts here, and very enjoyable presentation. Jackie gave me an envelope here that says 50-50 winner on it. Are you got tickets we're gonna draw? I'll just take that. Let Michael put it, he said we don't let the speaker drop.
Well, I'm gonna pull my own number, you know that, don't you?
I know, you put in $50, so it's and the last four numbers of your ticket is 3246.
Oh, good.
We have a winner? Okay, great. Come on up, we got a picture.
Fix. You serious?
Yeah.
I'll take a video.
So turn around for the camera and
Oh, thank you.
thank you very much for buying a ticket and supporting a. Excellent, thank you. And thanks everyone for attending our meeting, and there's still treats at the back, and take a minute to socialize. The game doesn't start till tomorrow, so there's no reason you have to run home. Thank you for coming, and good night.